Welcome to Unity Inspired Living. Our community began in 1989 as a small worldwide Unity book study group, and we've continued the momentum as an ever-evolving spiritual community. Each Sunday, you will find dynamic thought leaders delivering inspiring messages and talented musicians sharing sound healing through their melody. Here, we embrace ancient spiritual traditions, universal truths, and emerging wisdom. Let's check out this Sunday message. We're so grateful you've joined us.
Did her talk this morning, and I know we are so excited for it. Signing your own Emancipation Proclamation. Thank you, beloved soul, for saying yes to us and bringing yourself, your authenticity, and your heart and soul. We're grateful. It's all yours.
All righty, I'm on. All right. Well, it's so great to see all of you. Like Amy mentioned, I haven't been there in person for quite a while, but I always feel like at least we have this technology that can connect us somehow. I love it when she reads off the names of everybody who signed in because I recognize the names. I'm like, oh, I remember her, and I remember him, and I remember him. And when we were at the park and we had the picnic and got to hug each other up and go out to lunch, like she was saying, sharing at the table. So it's always fun to be with you, even though we are across the miles and all over the world, wherever we are. I loved it when Amy asked me to speak and she told me the theme for this month, which was the power of the holy pause. And it struck me for a couple of reasons. Is we always hear about stopping, taking a breath, taking a pause, taking a beat, but I hadn't really heard it with holy and pause together. So it just gave it more depth to it because there is a holiness to it, and that's not necessarily, tied to religion. It's just the holiness of the moment that we create. And so that got me thinking, well, what do I want to talk about today that, may go with that theme? Because she said I could go with whatever I felt where I was led. And I kind of looked at the calendar and thought, okay, well, we're June and, there's a Father's Day one and there's this and that. So I don't want to speak about Father's Day because I'm not a father. I'm a mother, but not a father. So I thought, probably the way to go would be talking about stopping and kind of like Sonia mentioned and denying things that are not serving our highest and greatest good. And that's how I kind of came up with signing your own Emancipation Proclamation. We forget so often that we're human beings and not human doings. And we think that taking the time to pause or take a beat means we're not being productive, we're wasting time, we're not doing something. We should be doing something. A friend of mine who's he used to be a Buddhist monk, he says, don't just do something, sit there. Because we always say, don't just sit there, do something. He says, don't just do something, sit there. So I thought that was really beautiful, tying into her theme. So again, like I said, my talk today is signing your own Emancipation Proclamation. And I'm sure most of you know the overall details of that actual proclamation, but I'm going to give you a short background for a refresher. So it was signed by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. And I want to read to you just a little snippet from this historic document. It declared that all persons held as slaves henceforward shall be free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them or any efforts they may make for their actual freedom. Now, as a little sidebar note that most people don't know, and I didn't know this until I was researching it, is that January 1st date was actually the final signing of the proclamation. But President Lincoln had issued a preliminary Emancipation Proclamation the year before on September 22nd, 1862. And that document stipulated that if the Southern states did not cease their rebellion by January 1st, the final proclamation would be signed. And so since that cease didn't happen, he went forward with the final proclamation. Now, even though the wording of the proclamation sounds like it officially marked the end of slavery in America on that date, it did not. And there's three reasons why. First, it only applied to any Confederate-controlled states at that time, so it had no effect on slaveholding border states. Second reason is the proclamation expressly exempted parts of the Confederacy that had already come under Northern control. And the third reason is the freedom it promised depended upon the Union Army winning the Civil War, which that didn't happen until April of 1865. But one of the other things that the proclamation did do when it was signed in formal form was it allowed African American men to join the Union Army and Navy, and there were an estimated about 200,000 that did, which greatly increased the number of soldiers fighting for liberation. Now, if you fast forward 2.5 years later, now we're at June 19th, 1865. And that's when federal troops arrived in Texas, which at that time was a Confederate-controlled slave state. And they informed all Texans about the signing of the proclamation and that all enslaved African Americans there, and there were about 250,000 in Texas at that time, were now free. In honor of that historic day, the newly freed slaves created an annual celebration that they initially called it Jubilee Day. But the name was eventually changed to Juneteenth, and that's a combination of the word June and the word 19th. That's where we get Juneteenth from. And as it seems fitting, Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday, and that was way back in 1980. But it wasn't until June of 2021, so that's only 5 years ago, if you can believe that President Biden signed it into law as an official national holiday. But regardless of the official holiday signings, Juneteenth was and continues to be a time when people of African descent in the U.S. reflect upon the arduous journey towards celebrating their freedom. And although we're no longer the property of others, and a lot has happened in terms of racial equality in this country, the damage was done and it still reverberates. But the topic of today's talk is not so much about the details of the Emancipation Proclamation or the details of Juneteenth, but about signing our own Freedom Declaration and releasing ourselves from our own harmful, hurtful, imprisoning, and outdated ways of living and being. We are always being called into new ways of living and being, ways that transcend the events and constraints of our past. And in this way, perhaps we can look at the Emancipation Proclamation kind of like a rebirthing story, where we're dying to the old and rising up into the new. Now, we all have a story, certain things that have happened or even maybe happening right now in our lives that were difficult, destructive, excruciating, debilitating, or whatever way you would describe them. But it's not an issue of what happened, because like I said, everybody has a what happened story. The real question we should be asking ourselves is, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? Are you remaining in the same place, waiting on some outward person or thing to liberate you from the prison within? Or are you willing to rise up, overcome your limited thinking, and march forward into a higher level of consciousness? So you may have heard this before. I've heard people say it different ways, but it's like walking around with a backpack with rocks in it, or a heavy box that's got heavy stuff in it. And sometimes, most of the time, we don't even know what's in there, but we're carrying it around anyway. So what we need to do is we need to put it down, open it up, and let's examine what's in there, right? You might stick your hand in that backpack, and the first rock you pull out, ooh, yeah, there's that childhood story that somebody in my family told me, mommy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, sister, whatever it is, that you can't do this, or boys aren't supposed to do this, or girls are supposed to be this way, or you can't take that topic in school because that's not going to lead you to a real career, or whatever it is. And here we are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades later, and that story is still coming up back there, right? Is that still serving you? And do you want to keep it? Probably not. Put it to the side. Stick your hand in there again. Pull out another one. Ooh. Aha, that's the one where you got fired. Or you were forced to retire early, even though you didn't want to, and you loved your job. So now there's this identity loss, and you're still holding on to it. Well, who am I without my job? Or who am I without my income? Or whatever it is. Is that still serving you? Do you want to keep that? Probably not. And then there are the things that are in that backpack that we want to keep. Lessons we've learned, trials and tribulations we've been through where there was something in it for us. May not have been the way that we planned to get into it, but it turned out there was a great blessing. That's something we would want to keep in that backpack or in that box. So it's all about examining what is it we're carrying around in our thought, mind, and heart and body. And is it still serving? And do we want to keep it or do we want to transmute it? So a few years ago, I attended a church service where the minister was talking about how we can look at metaphysical interpretations of Bible scriptures and we can place ourselves in every person and situation. And she used the example of the Israelites who felt like they were powerless in the world that they were living in. And she said that we could look at their situation and see how it sometimes represents the parts of ourselves that are enslaved. Those parts of ourselves that we feel trapped and powerless, living in a world that is not serving our highest and greatest good. Now, for those of you who have met me before, like Amy said earlier, some of you may be familiar with my story, and that's what I talk about in my book, I Cried and People Love Me Anyway. But it's the story of how in 2015, after a series of events that happened within a very short period of time, my life completely fell apart. It didn't just fall apart, it absolutely imploded. And I was on the brink of suicide. And despite having good family support, I was in an amazing spiritual community, and I had everything that you would expect or call basics. I had food, I had shelter, I had transportation, I had financial resources. It still wasn't enough to free me from the childhood trauma that at that time was holding me captive for 52 years. I was captive to the verbal and emotional abuse that I suffered from my father throughout my childhood. And I had chained myself to always trying to meet the expectations of what other people said, whether they thought how I should look, or how I should talk, or what I should drive, or what neighborhood they thought I could live in, or the emotions that I could show, and even how I could show those emotions. So in my mind, I was failing at absolutely everything. I felt like I was not wanted, and there was no way I was good enough for anybody else. So I had gathered up all of that early negative input and challenging experiences and deeply rooted it in my subconscious mind and in my body where it festered and grew. I spent, and I kid you not, years trying to prove everybody wrong. And my victim story became the damaging current flowing through and affecting every area of my life. So it's no wonder when the you know what hit the fan in 2015, I couldn't hold it down any longer. I could not stuff it down any longer. And I thought the only way to escape my torment was to check out. But then along came the Emancipation Proclamation. And I'm kind of using that a bit tongue in cheek, but what I'm referring to is the new thought principles that taught me that I am a perfect expression of God. And I have all the spiritual tools I need to live a happy and fulfilling life. And that my life has value and worth simply because I'm here. There's no striving for perfection or pleading for the approval of others necessary. I am a perfect expression of the divine presence that created everyone and everything. Period. End of sentence. And that's way more than enough. Through those New Thought teachings, I was able to slowly start unraveling and emerging from under the heavy weight and shadows of my childhood and young adult stories and start to create a new and true narrative that would serve me in a positive way and in turn positively serve the world. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that it's not just the traumatizing things that happen in our lives that keep us oppressed. Sometimes it's those stories that most people would say would be good, positive life experiences. And so I'll give you an example. I have a friend who says that she had the most fantastic childhood. She loved everything about it. She was always told what a good girl she was and how she played well with others. And she was an A student. And so she was always praised for her grades. And if you knew her, you see this part of her hasn't changed. She's just this bright light and attracts people to her. And she said she was showered with nothing but positive input. She loved her childhood. She had nothing negative to say about it. Now, I would think that that's a childhood story that most of us would like to have had, especially if ours wasn't quite as rosy. But even though my friend felt very loved and valued, underneath the surface, she felt a lot of pressure to be perfect. She was consumed with making sure that she didn't slip up in any way and not be seen as a perfect child. That was her bondage story. And she held on to that, and she freely tells the story for decades. And as you might imagine, it wreaked havoc in every area of her life, financially, in her career, emotionally, physically, every way imaginable. But once we can clearly see those false stories that we've grasped onto so tightly for what they really are, chains that bind us to the past, we can make conscious choices guided by our higher wisdom to let them go, to free ourselves from that crushing weight we've been carrying around for a very long time. So Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, once wrote this: "We must learn to let go, to give up, to make room for the things we have prayed for and desired. The one and only formative power given to man is thought. By his thinking, he not only makes character, but body and affairs. For as he thinketh within himself, so is he." Now, of course, he wrote this hundreds of years ago, so we can change those pronouns, but you get the idea. Letting go of what holds us back opens the way to freedom. So think about your life and how you are living it. Maybe you're still being oppressed by the things that people said to you in your family of origin. Or maybe you're still struggling with the disparaging things that people say about your age, or about your weight, about your educational background, or about your race. What about your career choice? What they say about your sexual orientation or your gender identity? Or maybe you're still bound to the religious beliefs forced upon you in your youth that never resonated with you in the first place. Are you still allowing yourself to be controlled by people or systems that dismissed or mistreated you in the past? Or maybe your imprisonment isn't coming from outside sources at all. Maybe you're still tying yourself mentally and emotionally to the people, places, and things that you yourself have already rejected, but it's still part of your victim story. These are the things we are marinating in every day. And we become so accustomed to them, we don't even realize that they're keeping us in captivity, slaves to a story that is not our real truth. But we absolutely have the power to unshackle ourselves. So how do we do that? How do we shed the chains of the past and move past our self-imposed limitations and step into a new free paradigm of living that's really a place of renewal and true empowerment? And Sonia kind of mentioned one of them earlier when she was talking about denials. And in Unity, we talk a lot about using denials and affirmations. So I'd like to do a quick little exercise with you. If you feel comfortable, and if you're not driving, don't do it if you're driving, I invite you to close your eyes, put one or both hands over your heart. Let's take a few deep breaths. So take a big deep breath in. Hold it for a second and let it out. Let's do that 2 more times. Big deep inhale breath in. Hold and let it out. And one more time. Big inhale in. Hold and let it out. And keep your eyes closed, hand on your heart. Now I'm going to say a few denials, and I invite you to either say them silently to yourself, or if you're somewhere where you feel comfortable saying them out loud, but just take these words in. I let go of limited visions of myself. I let go of limited visions of myself. I release negative patterns of thought. I release negative patterns of thought. Guilt has no hold on me. Guilt has no hold on me. My value and worth are not determined by what other people think or say about me. My value and worth are not determined by what other people think or say about me. I deny any belief that does not support my higher and greater good. I deny any belief that does not support my higher and greater good. So let's take another deep breath in. Hold it for a second and let it out. And when you feel ready, open your eyes. So just by saying those denials, and I hope you felt it too, as many times as I've done it, it still gives me heart palpitations because as I'm saying them, I hear the stories in my head from way back when. And in their place, we can use affirmations to create a new space and open us up to new possibilities. Using I statements are very powerful because they are definitive, they help you set intentions, and they light the pathways for moving forward. So you could say instead in that new open space, I am worthy of love and acceptance just by being here. I am unlimited. I am a beneficial presence in this world. I am constantly growing and changing. I am amazing. Or as I like to say, I'm all that and 3 bags of chips. I am a perfect expression of God. And I'm telling you, if you put a smile on your face when you're saying these things, even if you don't quite feel it yet, it just makes a total big difference. You are the architect of your own life. So create what it is that you want to see, do, and be in this world. The only one that can truly hold you back is you. In the Emancipation Proclamation, President Lincoln also wrote, and upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution, upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God. Now, again, you can replace Almighty God with whatever word or phrase you use to call your higher power. But no matter how you refer to it, know this: it is you. It is the perfect divine expression of spirit that you are and always have been and always will be. Now, just to be clear, we unfortunately still live in a world where people are systematically denied rights and privileges on a level playing field. And there's a whole lot of work to be done to turn that around. And it's going to take all of us, individually and collectively, to do it. But freedom doesn't only have to be legislated or marched for or signed on a proclamation or recognized on a national calendar. To be truly liberated, freedom has to come from within. We have to be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually rooted in the belief that we are always free to be our authentic selves. And perhaps that is the greatest kind of emancipation and personal liberation we could ever receive. So, what are you willing to do to create a sense of freedom every day? So, as Juneteenth is coming up at the end of this week, consider this. It just might be time for you to sign, seal, and deliver your own Emancipation Proclamation. Thank you and namaste.
Thank you, Lysa. Thank you so very much. Yes, Juneteenth is Friday, so I am so grateful for your talk today and how you weaved all of that together. And what a message! What a deep, practical message. So we forget sometimes that we're the ones that can sign, seal, and deliver. Wow, I love that. Now I want to sing that song. This was wonderful. Thank you for reminding us. I think most of all that freedom often begins with awareness, right? I mean, just aware of the stories, aware of what's going on, and not sort of operating from that, operating from the stories that are running in the background program. Time for that reboot, cleanup. What we do with the computers, right? Sweep through and letting go. You talked about letting go makes room, makes a space for something new, new stories, new systems, new identities, right? If we keep holding on to the old thing, there's no space for something new. And how you touch so much, just on new systems in our society, new systems in our lives and our family systems, our personal lives. So many pieces here that are so profound. I loved how you started with don't just do something, sit there. Thank you for sharing that. That was really cute. But something to really ponder, right? And think about, oh, that switched around. There's something to that. Really appreciated that. And then also taking us through the history of Juneteenth and freedom. I mean, that's a story. That's a story that can't be lost. and needs to be retold so that we remember. Well, last week we talked about Viktor Frankl talking about in the concentration camp when everything's removed, and then he had one thing left that it was his own choice. He could choose how he responded to all of this around him. And so we were talking about um, being set free when we're talking about the Emancipation Proclamation and the history of that. It's like being set free by someone else. And this, we're talking about we set ourselves free from those limiting beliefs, systems, and stories that we sometimes don't even know are running. So let me check in. Let me check in with everybody here. Hi, beautiful beings. I'm so grateful you're here. Yes, I love the meditation we did here. Let me scroll back. Okay, we have Ami says, beautiful. Thank you, Lysa. Yes, indeed. So much gratitude pouring out toward you. Marianne says, thank you, Lysa. Beautiful message. Indeed. Anaya, hi. Nice job, Lysa. Happy to hear your message. We're grateful you're here. Jennifer says, thank you, Lysa, for your loving and powerful talk. So grateful for your kind and caring spirit. Yes, we feel that. We feel your spirit, your heart. Thank you for being you, for uh, being willing to share deep parts of yourself. Nancy says, thank you, Lysa. That really touched some tender spots. I know, right? Because she's in touch. So because Lysa is authentic and in tune, attuned, we feel that, so that's what everybody is feeling. You feel you understand the message, but then there's something deep also that you're sharing with us. So so grateful for that. When you talked about your own story, how you were taught that you're a perfect expression of God and your life has value and worth simply because you're here. And that's a huge message for all of us to take away. You don't have to be doing something, but we kind of live in the land of doing. So it's hard to just sit there. So, you talked about letting go. Yeah. I loved how you said we have the power to unshackle ourselves. And then we talked about the denials and affirmations. And I listed the one in the meditation we did here in the feed if anybody wants to see what those were. Michael J says, complete authenticity, truth spoken. Sashay. Yes. And I'm going to steal, I'm all that and 3 bags of chips. I love it. That made me smile. Oh my goodness. What is this? And I took so many little notes I jotted down. Yes, to be truly liberated, freedom comes from within. And so it's time to sign, seal, and deliver your own Emancipation Proclamation. Do sometimes we forget that we can make that decision. I think some of the stories have such a stronghold, and like you mentioned, even Lysa, like they could be decades, that you've been carrying those rocks. I love how you talked about the backpack, pulling that. What is that one? What is that one? Boy, I'm starting to feel lighter as I examine and identify and become aware of what exactly is in that backpack. So thank you for you. Thank you for saying yes to us and being such a light. We are so grateful. So everybody, now we are going to, let me see, Luinda has a message coming in here. She says, thank you, Lysa. I love your reminder that it is up to me to be free, to be and do as my true spirit calls. Yes. And then Jan says, thank you so much, Lysa. You brought to life and brought directly into my heart the Emancipation Proclamation and truly the depth of that freedom for each one of us. And thank you for the denials and the affirmations. Yes. Thank you, Jan, for sharing and being here with us. Woo! That's a lot. So we are going to take a few minutes to process, digest, actually nourish, hydrate to come back into the Zoom room for our workshop with Lysa, which is change is inevitable, growth is optional. So we get to choose. We do get choice in this matter of our lives. So, wow, thank you for being here with us. So I'm going to drop the link here in the chat for the Zoom room. And that starts, let's meet in there in about 20 minutes. And it's also on the homepage. If for some reason you can't see it in the chat, it's on the homepage, unityinspiredliving.org. So we're going to move into there. And just remember that if you feel supportive, loved up, inspired by, encouraged on your journey by Unity Inspired Living, the messages and music that we offer here, we invite you to participate in the sacred practice of giving, the energetic exchange, the universal law of circulation. We have so many names for it, and it means we show what we value with where we spend our money and our time and our treasure. So thank you for sharing with us, because your generosity allows us to continue offering all the inspiration, the workshops, the messages, the music, the compassionate outreach, and all of what we do in our spiritual community. So thank you for being part of us. I'm going to close us with the prayer of protection, and I'd like to remind you that I speak this as a benediction, a blessing over you, for you to receive, for you to let it land. So, a reminder to you that this week, wherever you go, whatever you do, you never walk alone. So, I'm going to share the screen with you, and here is the prayer of protection. And as the author had written it originally as a benediction, a blessing over you. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. Power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. The mind of God guides you. The life of God flows through you. The laws of God direct you. The peace of God abides within you. The joy of God uplifts you. The strength of God renews you. The beauty of God inspires you. And wherever you are, God is, and all is well. Amen, beloveds. Thank you for being here with us. We will see you in the workshop link in just a little while. And as always, shine on, bright ones. We love you dearly. Thank you, Lysa, so very much. Peace and blessings.